Welcome to Prototype Thinking in Action. I'm Pablo, your host, and this is the podcast where we talk to founders, dive into one big challenge that they are facing, and help them solve it by using the prototype thinking method. Let's get started.
Hello, welcome Norman. Thank you for joining us today. We're super excited to have you today as our super special guest. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm Norman Tran. I'm one of the co-founders of Relating Between the Lines, which is an online school for relational education. So what that means is we have gyms to work out our muscles and get stronger there, but we don't often have places to practice how we communicate and connect with one another. And so why RBTL exists is because when I used to facilitate a class at Stanford GSB called Interpersonal Dynamics, it's affectionately known as touchy-feely. I saw that a lot of our MBA students would learn all kinds of different things in the class, but the learning was very high variance. It was never quite deterministic. And I was like, what if I could standardize a common language, a more definitive set of skills that we can learn over and over again outside of Stanford? And so in 2020, the company is founded and we've been teaching leaders around the world ever since.
It sounds to me as if you have this really ambitious, mostly online academy to train people just better communication and interpersonal skills, like soft skills. Is this more or less the gist of what you're doing?
That's the gist. When we started in 2020, there was this big wave of online learning. And so we were first and foremost an online school.
I was so fascinated when I saw what you were working on. You have this gorgeous, gorgeous website. It sounds like you're taking the scientific foundation of how people build deeper relationships out of the Stanford context, and you made it very, very tactical as well.
There's two axes or two ends that we were trying to balance against. On one end, there's the scientific and the rigorous, but often the flavor is very sterile.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you have like woo-woo, and it's like not accessible. It's like, what are they even talking about? But there's some flavors there that are actually really beautiful. And so we wanted to find something that's in the middle that doesn't feel like you're reading a textbook or learning from a academic person, but something that feels beyond that, more like an experience.
Could you tell us what's the biggest challenge that you're facing nowadays?
Yeah. So a little bit more background context. Stephanie, my co-founder, and I ran this company for 4 years full time, and we burnt out. It completely took everything out of us. And we realized that for now, we want to explore new business models that allow us to live while building this company, not make this the singularity of our entire lives.
Yeah.
And so since then, we've been looking for more flexible ways to deliver value to our customers that don't involve extremely highly choreographed launches with millions of touch points, so meaningful, devastating to our energy.
Yeah.
And so we, around 2023, started moving towards a self-guided course model that we would sell to others. And we know the course does very well, sold it to a decent amount of people. And now what we're trying to experiment with is to niche down more. And so the biggest challenge right now is of so many different people that we do enjoy serving and can serve, how on earth do we narrow in on, quote unquote, the optimal demographic or persona for us? Because up until then, we've attracted all sorts of folks and we're like, great, for the future of the company to grow, I think we have to finally narrow in.
Can you give some examples of potential niches that are kind of the top candidates?
Yeah, for example, children of Asian immigrants.
Ooh, there's one.
That realize there's more to life than your career.
Right.
Maybe it's time to invest in your relationships. So that's like one version. An even more like specific one is like Asians in relationships caught in the anxious avoidant dance. So that's like a very specific type of relational pairing, romantic relational pairing. Another one that's more like B2, B2C is targeting coaches and creating tools for them so that they can better serve their clients who are trying to work on relationships. And similar to that, what if we did that with therapists? Because we know that therapists that have taken our trainings want to recommend this stuff to their clients. And so there's all these different niches. They're all kind of hovering around the same thing because everyone needs stuff. But to run a business, you can't just sell to everyone.
Yeah. Yes. And these are very, very different, right? I see a few things. So one is that you're at this point that every specialty consultant hits. We have an infinite amount of energy to give. So we create the world's best experience and then we attract this rabid following. And then suddenly we're like, wait, I don't want to spend the next 30 years of my life doing this. And if your most limited resource is yourself, then it's like, how do I redesign the business for that? I feel like I've worked with so many coaches and consultants that reaches the tipping point of how do I productize what was previously an extremely high touch service. And the other thing that I've been seeing a lot in the market is that there's this drastic cascading market shift to people not wanting to buy skills. And it's been happening for like the past 5 years, but I feel like it's the pressure of work and modern life and all of the layoffs and the economy, and it just all comes together. And nobody wants to pay to build a skill anymore. Everybody just wants to pay to solve a bite-sized problem. And so then it's like, well, how do I productize inside this very fast flowing world with this fast flowing behavior channel? But then I'm hearing that you have a technology and you're looking for a product. Like you have the core thing that you can make work. It's exactly like a few years ago, Boston Dynamic came out with these robots that can move like humans. And they spent like 10 years working on this technology, and it's very impressive. But then what's the productization of that? And in some sense, previously, the technology itself was enough because your audience was here for it. But now, between all of the shifts, you need the much tighter product. Does that sound like kind of where you're at?
That definitely resonates. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we built this
Okay.
world-class thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's not enough.
Yeah, but it's not thing enough.
Yeah.
It has to be
Yeah.
thinger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So tell me a little bit more about what your leading thoughts are right now. What research do you already have? What are your top candidates? Are you about to test it, or have you already tested it?
What we realize is that we have this self-guided course. It's the culmination of everything that we were taught, but just made more accessible. It's less interactive, but we know that people still can get a lot from it. We wanted to do an experiment of what if we just focused our efforts to niche down and sell this course instead of trying to build all these other things.
So are your concerns more towards the acquisition part of like who do we target this to, or about like actually the content of the course itself? Like, are you thinking
So
about tweaking
we're
it, or
not
it's just...
so worried about the content of the course. We will have to do another pass at the product to tailor it to whichever audience we end up selling to.
Whatever niche you pick, you don't feel like you have technical risk on being able to deliver to them.
Yeah, it will take some
right.
time, but
Yeah.
I trust in us to be able to tailor it. And these niches that I presented earlier, they are niches that we are already familiar with. So they're not like, oh, I don't know anything about this new market. It's more like we never committed to that.
Yeah. Let's get some details here. Let's say tomorrow you decided you had the data to marry children of Asian immigrants. How long would it take you to convert the course to that?
I think if we took a solid month, we'd be able to update all the curriculum with the proper voiceovers to do that.
So there's a definitely significant opportunity cost, but it's not prohibitive. Can you share a little bit about how you're getting traction on the course right now and what your sell-through is?
In terms of the current rate, it's very low. In terms of like social media presence, we're not really doing much.
There's nothing wrong with these numbers being small because this has not been a priority for you, and that's completely reasonable. Do you know anything about user behavior around the course itself? Do you have feedback from it?
With new users, there's kind of like two camps. There's one camp that's like, this is so cool, I learned a lot, but there's still no ability for us to close the loop around like, what did you do? The second camp is, I want to like practice, but then I can't practice because it's just a video.
I see.
And so
yeah, that makes sense.
There's this disconnect between they get excited about the content, but then they don't know how to put it into application.
It sounds like you don't have validation in the pure course. We don't actually have data that tells us whether people can reliably go through the course and feel like they get enough value that is better than reading 20 self-help books, such that they would refer other people to the course. And the tipping point we want is that their experience at the course is good enough that they behaviorally, organically do word of mouth referral. There's the track of how do we make sure that the course adds truly punchy value, and also who does it add value to? So if we're trying to work on both of those together, then we're kind of solving the entire course design from scratch, and we're actually solving the complete product, not just the marketing question. Let me give you a chance to see how you feel about that.
Oh, it's like a breath of fresh air. Like I love the clarity to isolate the actual problems. So I'm feeling grateful. I'm also, of course, like a little like, oh,
Yeah.
like, oh God, here begins the
Yeah.
real work. You know, I feel a little concerned right now as I'm thinking about the form factor of the product and whether or not going after people that have the sharpest pain is actually the best target for us right now.
The good news part of this, though, is that to me, I feel like it simplifies our journey a little bit. So what I would do is I would pick your top 4 niches, and then I would run 2 friendly tests in each. And it'll be a significant upfront lift to get those users recruited, get them off the ground, do all of the really very, very extremely high touch scripting to get their buy-in. But you of all people, like that is your department. And then just run weekly check-ins with them. After 2 or 3 weeks, you should have a sense of how it's going with them. Let's pause for action items. So the top questions are, what is the right niche? How do we make the product succeed? What is the structure of the product? And then down from there, like marketing and growth and monetization stuff. So we kind of have to solve the first 3 all at the same time in blobs with each other. So what we're going to do is, based on your market research, make your list of your top however many, maybe a dozen or whatever, candidate niches. Then we're going to take a first pass to slice the niches based on implementability. So we slice it down to niches that are more likely to be successful using a purely online product. And then from there, we pick our 4 favorites, and then we run 2 tests per each of those. We call this early stage visibility testing. And the goal of the early stage visibility testing is for us to get a sense of like what the questions even are and like what the possibilities are and what the landscape of working with these niches are likely to be. So the goal of this layer of testing is not for us to successfully pick a niche and go from there. The goal is to get what we say 15% more confident about where we're going. It's to make marginal progress in understanding the lay of the land. So we'll take what we get from there and we'll have a different shape of understanding the problem we have and the challenge and what's possible and what's not possible. And we'll have different top uncertainties after we run this batch of tests. And then we'll come back and kind of reconfigure them, look at what we know, look at our new understanding, and come up with what our new set of big uncertainties are, and come up then with what's the new most optimal set of tests to go test into those uncertainties. And so every set of tests we run is just a few weeks or even a few days, and it just gets us to the next layer of understanding.
That was a very helpful breakdown.
Once that process has been successfully launched, what sort of things should he be paying attention to?
So what we want when you do the debriefs with them is ask them to express like what happened on their journey. I love asking people to draw their journey. And what I say is like, it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else, but from the moment when you first started interacting with the course until now, what was your journey with it? Draw something. It doesn't matter what, there has to be at least one thing on that piece of paper that is not a word, and then have them share it and explain it. And what that does is that gives me the language that they're using to parse their journey, and it forces them to think about what the course of events was. It is their definition of success, the same as your definition of success. Anything notable that happens, you just unpack it, and then you just kind of take that pile of insights, write it all down, have a little collection at the end of the biggest takeaways, do that every week, and then see where it lands.
Does this make sense, Norman?
I feel simultaneous like excitement because like, oof, there's something to do, something concrete to actually apply. And on the other hand, there's that like feeling like, oh my God, things have not worked for so long. Like now we need to do all this. It feels like boiling the ocean. You're like it's like a child part of me that's like throwing a tantrum right now. Like, I just want it to work now. And so I'm just like,
me too. I get it.
just being present to both realities, but trying to lean more into the excitement.
So let me actually try something with you. So on a scale of 0 to 100%, if I were to ask you right now to take a guess about how to build a product, like if you had to build it today and you had to pick your niche, design the whole thing, how confident are you that your current best guess is the right answer? Like 5%, 90%, 37.3%?
Like 58. It's not 0 because we have enough knowledge of how this works, but it's also like there's so much more that remains to be done, and that lack of specificity is what would be required to make it a good product.
And if I were to ask you on the same scale, if you had to pick a niche today, how confident are you?
I have no idea.
Yeah. So your product is like 60 and the niche is like super, like no idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. There's nothing you can do to get more than 15 to 20% more confident in one step. No matter how hard you work, no matter how much you project, how much research you do, how smart you are, even how much experience you have, it just happens to be the case that if you are like 5 to 10% confident about something, you don't have the context, the visibility, the perspective, or the language to build what the 90% solution is. And that's why it feels stressful, is because as high performers, we're taught to never come out the gate until we can get an A.
Figure it out.
Yeah. So you're sitting here holding the entire load of how do I go from 5% confident to getting an A? And it is literally possible. That is not how data and learning work. So I want to take all of that pressure off of you and just say your only job is to get 15% more confident. So you're 5% confident about what niche you are right now. we're going to run an experiment, and this experiment is going to get you to maybe 25% confident. But from there, the universe will look different. Your questions will look different. Your perspective will look different. And you know what? Then we run an experiment to get you to 40% confident. And step by step, layer by layer, a few weeks per layer will get you there. And one day you'll look up and be like, I'm just fussing about the details of how to reach my niche at this point, but the answers are all obvious. So you'll get there. It's just, you absolutely cannot see it from here. So just take the pressure off yourself to do anything that requires 90% confidence right now, because it is mechanically impossible.
So brilliant. I actually felt the weight lifted.
Physically
I'm
lift
like,
up your
wow.
shoulders.
Yeah, you like
that-
close your eyes.
That
Yeah.
is amazing. Because
Yeah.
for me, you literally like acupuncture. You just hit
Oh, man, that's-
hit the pressure
yeah.
point. The
Yeah.
pressure point is I tend to overestimate my own ability
Yeah.
to think through things.
Yeah.
And I think if I just think harder and have
Yeah.
the master framework, whatever,
Yeah.
then I will leap to 90% in one step. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, now I get excited about all the little steps I can take to get there,
Yeah.
which completely changes
Yeah.
how I orient
Yeah.
towards this work.
So every time you notice yourself stuck like this, just be like, what is my confidence level actually? I'm just 10% confident. Okay, what's one thing I can do to get 15% more confident? That's all you need to do.
Thank
Boom.
you.
I'm personally really excited to see what you find in this sort of like exploration journey in the next few weeks. So hopefully we'll be talking to you again in a month, maybe a bit more, and we'll have some other interesting war stories and insights to talk about.
Yes, I'm so excited to run these experiments and woo, so let's see what we
Ooh.
find on the other side.
Thank you for listening to Prototype Thinking in Action. Please don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join our email list and follow us for exclusive access to tools, case studies, and live workshops. All links can be found in the description below. See you next time.